So in this next section, in chapter 6 of Being and Time, care as the being of Dasein, he moves in from a discussion of anxiety to section 41, Dasein's being as care. And so care, it will turn out, becomes the primary ontological orientation of Dasein to the world. And in this respect, I think what Heidegger wants to do is to shift his idea, or to shift rather Husserl's idea that our primary orientation to the world is theoretical and cognitive, to shifting it to a more emotional-based, mood-based orientation to the world. Our orientation to the world in Heidegger is always mood-based. We've already seen his analysis of fear and anxiety, and then in his later lectures on world finitude, solitude, the fundamental concepts of metaphysics, is a very interesting analysis of boredom, which isn't the least boring at all as you read it. It's a very fascinating analysis of a basic mood orientation to the world. I want to recount the fable that he gives. He gives a fable later in the second section, not section 41 but 42, which is taken from Hugeness's Fables, which is a story about care. The Latin word is cura. The German word is Sorge. And care was crossing a river one day, the story goes, when she decided to create the first human beings by scooping clay up from out of the ground, and she began to mold it. Jupiter happened to be walking by, and she asked Jupiter to animate this clay with his spirit, which he agreed to do. So he blew the breath of the spirit into it. But then the two got into a dispute over whose name should be assigned to this new being. Jupiter thought that it should be him because he had animated it with his spirit. Care thought that it should be her because, after all, she made the thing. But then while they're having this dispute, the goddess Earth herself rises up out of the ground and demands that it be named after her, since, after all, it is a piece of clay that has been taken from her body, so it belongs to her. So none of the three can agree, so they decide to bring Saturn in to adjudicate here. Saturn is Kronos, the god of time, significantly. And he says, well, what we'll do is, when this creature dies, its spirit will go up to Jupiter, its body will go into the safekeeping of Earth, but while it is alive, it will be under the adjudication of care. Care will be its primary concern for while it is alive. And as far as its name goes, we will name it human, because it's made up out of the humus of the earth. And so that's the story that he recounts about care. Note, too, that this story has the basic structure of his later fourfold that he talks about in essays like The Thing and in Building, Dwelling, Thinking. He comes up with a basic mandala structure for being of the fourfold of earth. It goes earth and sky, mortals and divinities, which a thing things. When a thing is manufactured, it things by bringing and integrating this fourfold together into the clearing, so that a thing becomes presents itself in a way that has meaning and depth and significance and isn't just some silly mass-produced object. But that's the basic fourfold that he comes up with, and you can see that those entities are all present in this myth. You can see that the earth goddess is there herself. The mortal is present in so far as that's what they're making, and it's concerned with the divinities doing the making, and Jupiter is, of course, a sky god. So the fourfold are all there pregnant in this fable, which perhaps through the phenomenon known as cryptamnesia, when you read something and then you forget about it and then it surfaces up in your thinking many years later, is behind this. But it turns out now that with respect to care, there are three different types of care, and he's already introduced us at this point in the narrative to two types: Besorgen, which is concern, and Fürsorge, which is solicitude for others. Besorgen is concern, and concern is primarily oriented toward things that are in the mode of ready to hand, our human equipmental world, whereas Fürsorge is oriented toward other Daseins. It's the solicitude that we have for other Daseins. Care itself, Sorge, is the more primordial of the two, and these two are rooted in care, insofar as Dasein, care manifests the structure of the being of Dasein, insofar as it reveals Dasein's always already being ahead of itself. And in that respect, Sorge is related to the future, whereas Besorgen, in its concernful dealings with the tasks and the things and modes that are in ready-to-hand mode around us, is related to the present. And so time here is linked with care, I think, in an almost mythological way. We saw in the fable from Hugeness how time, the god Saturn time, was invoked and is linked intimately with care for Heidegger. But there are two aspects now to Fürsorge, to solicitude. There's an authentic and an inauthentic aspect to solicitude. Our solicitude for the being with one another. The inauthentic aspect of this is that we can become so concernfully involved with someone else that we end up making them inadvertently dependent upon us. That's inauthentic, and it's not the good way to go. The other way is the authentic mode, whereby we help the person stand up on his own 2 feet. And I sense, of course, a right-wing politics involved in here. The theory of the state is not something upon which the individual should be dependent, but one should learn to stand on one's own 2 feet. And of course, in standing on one's own 2 feet, care is the primary mode, the primary modality that you're in once you're standing on your own 2 feet. Care is the thing that is going to guide you in your concernful dealings, in your realization of your projects in the world that are manifestations of your world projection, your being as world projection. And the other aspect of time, and we can see that time is beginning to come into the text here more and more. It starts to come in now with care. And the book note that is called Being and Time, and it's divided into 2 sections. And really, I think the first division is about being, Dasein as being, and all of its different existential aspects of being. And the second half is about time. So the title actually appropriately refers to these 2 halves. So it's appropriate that he ended where he did. He didn't finish the book. It was supposed to have 3 sections. In that sense, it might have evoked past, present, future. But with regard to past, present, future now with respect to care, care, it turns out, unifies the 3 basic constitutive features of Dasein. The first is its existentiality, or its always being ahead of itself. That's its future orientation that it brings in here. It's always being ahead of itself. And then its past orientation is its facticity, insofar as we're always already thrown into a world under particular circumstances, and that's the past. Care is linked with that as well. And then it's also linked with the present insofar as we find ourselves in a fallen mode alongside of other entities that we encounter in the world. And so care unifies this basic structure of past, present, future, existentiality, facticity, and fallenness. All 3 of those are bound up together in a temporal way with care. So we're starting to move into a concern with time now as we move further into the narrative. And so we'll leave it at that point for now, and then the next section will be the relationship between Dasein, worldhood, and reality.